Data from the census will be used for the next 10 years for many things, including determining New York State's representation in Congress, as well as local districting. Census data is also used for the distribution of about $880 billion of federal funds to local municipalities. The Census Bureau estimates that every person that is not counted equals a loss of approximately $2,500 per year to local municipalities. This means that every 400 people who are not counted equates to a loss of about $1 million in funding each year. It's not too late. Please complete your census today. Tony, if
Okay. Can I just start off with a extension request from Shafferoff? They're looking for a 12-month extension. The usual 6 would put them in into the winter, which is not ideal to start their project. So they would like to go for 12 months.
anything, Tom, you want to add about this?
This is more a seasonal project, so they basically want to restart the clock again so they can start over.
And this is their first extension?
First extension.
Okay. I make a motion, we grant the extension.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Granted.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
It would be helpful to do the votes by roll call, have call each individual's name and have them vote. Just makes the record cleaner for the board as far as voting on a resolution.
Okay.
It's one thing we're recommending for all the boards. So Jackie could just, when there's a resolution, Jackie could just call the names of each member and everybody could vote, especially because I heard one of the members, I thought, vote in opposition. I don't know. It sounded like it, but that would be the appropriate way to proceed.
Okay.
You might want to have her call the roll. So,
Jackie,
yeah.
if you want to just,
You just want me to say all the board members' names?
yes.
Yeah, one at a time, and then they would each vote. You would call the roll, and then you would each vote.
Okay. Chairman Kenneth Cooper,
Yes.
Anthony Giardina,
Yes.
Howard Dubs,
Yes.
Michael Nolan,
Yes.
Harvey Bonaparte.
Yes.
Okay.
Harvey, nice background.
Okay. Can we move on from there now?
Yes.
Right. And then just, Mr. Chair, just for the public's purpose, obviously, we're doing this meeting by video conference pursuant to the governor's executive order due to the COVID-19 crisis for the public purposes. So until further notice, the meetings will be by Zoom. And there's a method of participating that the public has been given to participate. I think you've been notified. You could either raise your hand or put in a chat or put in a comment in the YouTube video. I believe that there is also dialing of I think *6 if you're on just by telephone. So I wanted to make that clear for the public when the time comes to comment on a particular item.
Okay. Okay, so our first case will be the Mount Kisco Country Club.
Good evening. This is Victor Solaric, EPS architect, attending the meeting for the Mount Kisco Country Club today. Can everybody hear me well?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
I can.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody. I'm going to stay off the camera, but hopefully you can hear me, and I will share my screen, which is more important than what I look like. In the interest of updating everybody, I just want to briefly describe the proposed project, if I may. It is a temporary fabric structure to cover 2 existing tennis courts in the middle of the Mount Kisco Country Club campus on the west side of the existing clubhouse. And it's a good distance from all the adjacent properties and roadways. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, good. We have, as you are aware, we have been in front of this board several times. We have gone to the planning board in November of 2019 and subsequently to the architecture review board. Your board got the comments from the two other boards, and then in January we presented back to the zoning board of appeals with also providing a updated landscaping plan, which was the result of number of comments that came from the planning board and your board and the public in general. So the landscaping plan, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Included mostly on the western side of the proposed core. The proposed core cover dome is this rectangle with a square hatching, and there's a proposed I think it's 19 trees that are mostly evergreens. The landscape architect had reviewed the species. The sizes are about 14 to 16 feet in height proposed at the time of planting. So we would have a substantial visual cover of the court right from the beginning. I think that's pretty much how far we got in January. And I'm sorry I missed the February meeting, and then of course everything went in a way that we find ourselves today in a virtual meeting. So in addition to the screening, the landscape screening, we also proposed and discussed with the board sound attenuation around the mechanical equipment. There are 3 equipment housing pads on the west side of the proposed dome, and all 3 of them would be fenced in, and the fence would actually have sound attenuation blankets installed. Those are exterior grade blankets that substantially muffle the noise. We have also, if you remember, we have also provided sound calculations measuring the estimated noise levels at the property line, which are much lower than the maximum allowed by the Newcastle code. This is the existing plan, which shows the 4 courts, and this is the pair that's being covered. And then this is the overall site, which has the 2 courts located and the dome located in the middle of the property.
Victor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What other portions of the property are going to receive additions or changes other than the dome on the tennis court and the attached mechanicals?
As part of this project or generally? I'm not sure.
Well, you know, anything that you're doing to change the what the original site plan looked like, or what it was existed as when approved by the planning board. Are there any other changes to the site plan?
The changes are all pertaining to the temporary dome. They include the storm drainage system
Okay,
that has been designed and sized, and the submission has been given to Mr. Cioli for review. There's a temporary road that's going to be there, basically just widening the access for during the time of construction, but that'll be removed and then turned back into its original condition. There's a slight, a narrow walkway that starts from the corner of the clubhouse and walks towards the entrance to the temporary dome. And that's it. The landscaping and the pads in the back.
all right, because I was confused when I looked at the picture and I see the crosshatch building that says Frame Pro Shop. And then there's another crosshatch masonry barn maintenance, but those are all there already.
Those are all there. All the diagonal hatches are all existing buildings that are there. They've been there for many, many years. The masonry barn, the maintenance building is one of the original barn buildings, just as the
I just
two-story
wanted to
barn.
make sure that there were no other changes to the site.
No. No, they're
Okay.
not. This is an amendment to a special use permit, so we're trying to amend a special use permit that the club is operating under.
Mr. Solari?
Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sure you were aware of the note that we got from the planning board dated January 9th, 2020. There were a few items in there that they thought should be addressed. I'm wondering if you had done anything about it. One was the color of the dome itself. Another was the trying to save that cherry tree. And let me see. Those are two major questions for me right now. Have you done anything about finding another vendor or another color for the dome? Because the planning board was kind of leaning toward the brown color that I think our board also was leaning toward. But your supplier was not furnishing that color.
Yes, after the meeting with the planning board, we had requested additional colors from the vendor, and surprisingly, there were more colors available. And then we had presented actually to your board, I believe at the January 29 meeting. Sorry if I don't get the date exactly right, but it was a January meeting.
Okay,
And there was a darker, more of a natural color, kind of a green brown color that was shown to your board, and I think it was recorded should be recorded in the meeting minutes.
okay. I wanted to just clarify that in my mind
Yeah.
because I had forgotten if we
Yeah.
had made a decision on that or not. But from what I recollect, I think the board was leaning toward the brown or tan color, and as long as that's available, I'm happy with it.
That is correct.
Okay. What about saving that cherry tree? Is there anything that
So-
can be done to do that?
That was also discussed at the last zoning board meeting that we went to. And what we had done is change the routing of the gas line, which was most likely jeopardizing the root system of the cherry tree. And so the gas line where it previously went around the equipment housing pad and close to the triple cherry tree, which is right here, is going to go right along the grade beam. It's going to be laid in simultaneously with the installation of the grade beam to avoid any further disturbance beyond the immediate area of the dome.
Okay, and there's no building code requirements or objections to having that gas line so close to the structure itself?
No, it has to be deep enough and laid in a way that will prevent settling and potential damage to it.
Okay,
But
as
as
long as
long
it meets the code, that's what I was concerned with.
I would, I think it does meet the code, but I would also welcome any input from Mr. DePoli.
Okay.
But I just
Thank you.
add something, I don't know if this is something that Jackie could go back and check on, but I remember the conversation about the color very differently. I think we had sort of declined the recommendation by the planning board and had looked at something in a more neutral color, whether that was sort of, gray may not be the correct word, but that was what we had sort of looked at as far as a sample, and that's what I remember sort of having a consensus on.
I agree. I brought 4 samples to the meeting in January. And they were all in the kind of a tan color tone.
Okay.
And I think we tentatively agreed on one of the darker of the colors.
Well, I'm trying to remember myself. I know that we had a lot of choices, and I know that we didn't, at least I didn't think the green was appropriate. And I don't remember exactly which color we chose at that last meeting, but whatever it was, I'm not changing my mind on it. I just want to be sure that it doesn't go back to being the original green.
Right.
I recall it being the darker color.
Okay.
It's not green, it's not white, and it is sort of a tannish dark color.
Do we have a name for that color or a
I will,
color code?
I don't have it right this minute, but I do. I know it was a sample number 4, and I need to look at the name of it.
Victor, I think that it will be real. This is Sabrina. I think it will be very important to make sure that the color is noted on the plans and is shared and specified in the resolution, because the color was a big issue for the planning board. If the zoning board is going in a direction, I want to make sure that it's very well documented in the approval.
Agreed, yeah.
Sabrina, does the planning board have a record of the brown color that they approved? Yes. Okay.
Well, it was a recommendation that was in the memo to you from the planning board. They specifically said that they were unhappy with the color that they initially proposed, and they wanted to see more of a brown-like color or something of similar nature. So they have
said brown,
identified.
but that they didn't indicate the specific color or the name of the color.
No, they did not, because there was only 3 or 4 colors that the applicant was showing to the planning board when they were before the planning board. So they were sent to go find other colors, which the applicant did. And your board chose a different color, a gray versus a brown. And I don't, I just want for the record so that, if you approve of the dome, that when folks see the color, that it's clear of the decisions being made regarding the color.
All I was trying to indicate was that we have not seen the brown color, but I think we are willing to go with the planning board's choice of the brown color, provided that they have focused on the exact color that it's going to be.
I don't know if that's right, Harvey.
No?
If you remember at the last meeting, I believe it was the consultant to the club who had 2 or 3 samples, and we passed them around, and I remember it as Sabrina did, and it certainly wasn't brown.
Was that the January meeting?
Is that the last time that the club was in to see us?
Yes.
January? Yes, then it must have been, yes.
I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay. Oh, you were still down in the Bahamas?
I was on the beach, still
Right.
back on the beach now.
Right, okay.
It was the January meeting, and there were 4 colors shown, and the board was leaning towards the darker of the 4. And I can certainly find, get the record, get the name, and however it needs to be recorded, certainly on the drawings, but maybe even have one of the samples attached to the, to the final submission. If
And,
that's
and I
okay.
think that it would be perfect.
Did Bob Cioli have anything that he wanted to bring to our attention?
Good evening, everyone. Basically, I have my memo that I prepared dated, hopefully everyone has a copy of it, March 17th, 2020, and I'll go over it briefly. Basically, I focused on the review of the drainage plan and stormwater pollution control plan that was done by the applicant, Mr. Alfonsetti. And basically, predominantly, most of the conditions have been satisfactorily completed. The important ones with the sizing and the amount of rainfall and following DEC regulations and the deep tests. There are a few items. I'll let you know which ones they are, basically, that are incomplete. And basically they are ST4, 5, and 6 in G1. Basically ST4 is a maintenance agreement that we like to see the applicant post. We have standard stormwater agreements, which they do have to post. It has to be looked at by the board and council and then filed in the county. ST5 is basically a performance bond they have to post for just only the stormwater improvements, which again is something council has to look at and be approved by the board. ST6 is a standard application they have to get from the DEC, which is an acknowledgement that they have submitted the plans and signed off by the town. G1 is a engineer's estimate, which is used to determine the performance bond and also the inspection fee for this, because this is a commercial development. Basically, if the zoning board is inclined to, I have no objection to recommending that those comments be conditions of approval of the resolution and be required to be performed and completed prior to the issuance of a building permit. And that's pretty much the gist of it.
Carrie, are you having any issues with the picture?
No,
No? Okay.
The screen is still being shared, just so you know, Ken. So that's why
No.
the diagram's still up.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean that. It's something else. It's sort of going in and out.
is anybody else seeing that?
No,
Okay. I'll keep an eye.
Okay. Sabrina, was there anything else you wanted to bring up at this point?
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Where are you?
Okay, so the only other big issue before the planning board was the view from the Kittle House. And I would ask the applicant to summarize for everybody the changes that have been made regarding that view, so that you can weigh in on that.
Thank you, Sabrina. The view from the Kittle House came about at the end of last year, and we were asked to demonstrate the view shed viewed from the dining room of the Kittle House. So what you see in front of you is a view taken directly from the dining room of the Kittle House, and the green bubble in the back, at that time it was still green, is the outline of the dome where it is proposed to be located. Since then, the landscaping, the proposed proposed mitigation landscaping has been substantially increased in terms of the density and number of the trees. But these trees that you see in schematically on the rendering are shown at the 14 to 16 foot height as it is proposed. The outline of these trees are the existing, so they are actually filling in, and you can, I basically traced the outline of the existing trees that are currently standing in front of the dome when viewed from the west side, from the Kittle House terrace.
I think it'll make a big difference if the color were brown.
It'll, yes, the color will blend in more with the background of what is shown on this photograph. This is obviously, I think, middle of November, maybe even later. I forget exactly, but that's, you know, in the middle of winter without any snow, and you can see the color, the general color of the background is sort of between grays and tans, and the dome will be closer to those colors.
Eric, is there anything else that we haven't covered?
Mr. Chairman, no, I mean, I'm looking back at the minutes from the January meeting, just as far as the discussion of the color, and, you know, there was a discussion of what the Architectural Review Board's consensus was. They had chosen sort of a greener color, a darker green color. The planning board discussed, again, the planning board's idea was that a browner, more sort of earth tone would be recommended, and that they had recommended that you provide something in a browner color. And then the last discussion was that the landscape architect, I guess for the applicant, Abigail Adams, was there. She was asked what the color solution would be, what color solution would be best, and she commented like a darker gray color. She stated a dark gray is probably the closest option to brown that they can get. So I'm assuming there is no brown, specifically brown color, that there is a darker gray that's somewhat close to that brown color. And so that's, I think, confirms the chairman's recollection of the nature of the discussion in January. But the key is to make sure we're all in agreement on the exact color when we, you know, when the final resolution is adopted.
I'm good. I'm on a zoning meeting. A Zoom meeting?
Uh-oh.
So basically, how can we confirm the color?
So, Mr. Solaric, was there, you have the color samples that were showed at that meeting in January, right?
Correct.
I'm trying to think of procedurally the best way. I don't know if showing them now would give you enough of a sense of it.
Well, is it time sensitive to choose a color now?
I think we could do it before the final, I mean, what I'm anticipating tonight, and you know, unless Sabrina or Bob or Tom have any further comments, I mean, procedurally, the public hearing is still open. You could close the public hearing. I don't know if there's, or you should probably find out if there's any further public comment from anybody on the video conference tonight. But then the procedure would be close the public hearing, and then for the board to discuss, you know, SECRA and the application for a special use permit and a variance, and make its recommendation or take a straw poll of whether it wants to grant the application, whether it's going to issue a negative declaration under SECRA, and then direct us to, or direct the planning department in my office to prepare a final resolution that could be voted on at the May meeting. I suppose in the interim, we could circulate physical copies of the color samples, and then at the May meeting, you could make a final decision based on the color samples that you have. I mean, I'm just throwing an idea out there, you know, to make sure we're all in agreement on which color the board is going to choose. But that's sort of just a thought, given that we're not all there to look at the color samples right now.
I think if Jackie could arrange to have the color samples in question distributed to the board members, you know, for us to look at, we can then hopefully come to a consensus about that.
Do that.
I'd be happy to send the color sample that was reviewed on January. I have it marked, so I know which one it was.
So
And
are you sure that that's what then your landscape architect, have you spoken to her to know?
yeah,
what
she
discussed
was there
that?
with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because,
that was the day that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, because I don't think you were at that meeting, right?
No, I
No,
was there.
He was there in January, Kim.
Oh, he was? Okay. Okay.
And I recommend that Jackie goes back through the meeting video or the minutes to pull out that discussion for all of you so that you have kind of the discussion that you had in January with the color that he's going to circulate.
Yes, good idea.
That helps, yeah.
Okay.
To refresh
Jackie.
everybody's
if-
memory.
if-
That's a great idea.
If we pick the color in January, and the reason I brought the color business up, I don't really can of worms, is that I know we discussed them and I know we looked at certain different tones, and I don't recall exactly which one we picked at that particular time. And if it's in the minutes or in the video, that would solve the problem.
So we could circulate a link to the video with where in the timestamp you would look to see that conversation, and you could all review it. And I think if you circulate the color, if Mr. Solaric could provide, it'd be better to provide 5 sets of that color. I don't know if you can still get more of them rather than the one. The one would be difficult. We need one for each board member, unfortunately.
They'll be very small.
You cut them up, huh?
Cut them up, yeah.
Not big enough for me to make a sweater?
Not
Unless
even
somebody
close.
somebody has a different opinion, I think that's the best way to do it, as Sabrina said. So, and then we can make a final decision on the color before a final resolution is adopted.
Correct.
How many samples would you then need total?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you envision the town hall to be open in the near future at all?
Well, it is open for essential employees, and you could go in individually. I don't want to speak for, it looks, we could find out if you could go in to view the sample.
Listen, folks, I think it's easy enough for the color palette that was shown to you in January to be recirculated via email. I mean, Victor, if you happen to have it on your desktop now, you could show it. I think that it's important that the name of the color and the number of the color, who is the maker of the color, be distributed to everybody. If you want to submit paper copies, we are still in the office. Every day there's somebody in the office that we can prepare a distribution of copies for all members of the zoning board to pick up at town hall. We really don't want people in town hall right now. The town hall is closed, but we are essential workers. There's somebody in the office every day. If we get copies, if you can get copies at this point due to, businesses not copying, but if you can, we can distribute those and have you come pick them up, or we can deliver them.
I have samples. If I can make, let's say, 3 samples out of that one, so it'll make it easier to distribute and maybe share by some.
I don't think it's possible, Victor, to share at this point, so you would need to get enough samples for all board members.
Okay,
Sabrina, what do you think about him taking a picture of the color sample and circulating it?
I'm concerned about different screens interpreting color differently.
Yeah.
You know, I just, there's a difference. There's a difference between, you know, the color red I'm wearing on the screen versus what it is, you know, in when you touch it.
No, that
So,
was my concern too. So that's, yeah.
right, I think that I think it would be best if Victor can get 5 or 6 versions of the colors from the manufacturer so that we can distribute the colors to all the members' homes. I think that it would be an easier decision for everyone to make if they could touch the color.
all right, no problem. I'll do,
Okay, thank you, Victor.
providing I can, providing I
Providing you
can give
can.
them, yeah.
You can get them, right?
Right.
So
All
Eric,
right.
should we run through these, you know, these discussion points about,
Well, I would find out if there's anybody on the line to,
Okay.
for the
Yep.
public, you know, from the public. And then if there isn't, you can close, as long as the planning director, the town engineer, and the building inspector are all in agreement that no further information is needed to make the secret decision and make a decision on the application, you can close the public hearing and then have that discussion.
okay. So Carrie, is there anyone in the queue to be heard on this?
We do have 9 people attending. If anybody is interested in speaking, please, you can raise your hand. There should be a hand, a digital hand you can raise, or you can type a message into the chat box and we will open up your speaking line. And there's nobody on YouTube that's posting anything. So nobody yet?
Seeing something,
There was
one chat.
Should I
Oh,
just,
there we go. Hang
I
on
just-
1 second.
That's
should I just
Okay.
run through the list?
Sure.
Carrie, and just ask, you know, if any of the following people, David Kulik, Jeff Rosenbaum, Lavanya Young, Michael Corsione, Paul McCarthy, Pei Yai, Tanya Barshall. Do any of you wish to speak on this matter or have your voice heard before the board?
Okay, David Kulik raised his hand. I'll open up his talking line.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that was a little bit premature. I'm
Okay.
listening for another matter. I've never
Okay,
done
no
this
problem.
before. So I'll lower my hand.
Sure, no problem. Okay. That's how it'll work when it's comes up.
Okay, so since it doesn't appear there's any further public comment, and then, you know, as long as the town's consultants are okay and they don't require any further information, the board can make a motion to close the public hearing and vote on that motion.
Is that the case with everyone?
yes, I'm okay.
Okay. I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, Jackie, would you go through the roll call?
Chairman Kenneth Cooper,
Yes?
Anthony Giardina,
Yes,
Harvey Bonaparte,
Yes,
Howard Dubs,
Yes,
Michael Nolan.
Yes.
So then the next procedure would be, you have to make a decision, you'll have to make a determination with respect to secra, a determination on the amended special permit, and a determination on the variance. And I, you know, I think the best procedure would be just to take a straw poll on all 3 of those items tonight and direct us how you want us to proceed with respect to a written resolution, preparing a written resolution regarding each of those items.
Okay, starting with Secra. This is an unlisted action under Secra. Does anyone on the board feel that there are any potential adverse environmental impacts?
No,
do
I
not.
think we've reviewed the application and we've reviewed the visual impacts, and the scenarios that we've seen show there should be no negative impacts. And according to what I feel, a negative declaration is in order.
I would agree, also based on the additional padding that was used for the sound, keeping the sounds from escaping from the property.
Anyone else on the board wish to be heard? Okay. Then,
The next issue would be with respect to the special, so that would be a negative declaration of secret. And the next issue is the consideration of the factors, the general requirements and specific requirements in sections 430B and 430.04 relating to monasteries and clubs, and whether the amendment should be granted.
so starting with, will the proposed use serve a community need or convenience?
I think it's clear that the use which was originally deemed to do that has not changed, and if anything, it's even more significant that we have an institution like this that provides the services to the community.
Okay, and the location and size of the use, the nature of the intensity of the operation involved is consistent with the location and the site in general.
Yes, the dome is located in an area of the property where the tennis courts already exist. And will be in harmony with the orderly development of the district. The club also has other buildings nearby. We are going to put restrictions on the number of persons that could use this tennis dome, and we can operate to limit any potential disturbance to the neighborhood and property owners. So that should be okay.
Okay, next, the location, nature, and height of the buildings, walls, and fences, and the nature and extent of existing or proposed plantings on the site are such that the use will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of adjacent land and building.
I would say that, as Tony mentioned above, the dome will be screened by existing landscaping and ground contours, and it's not going to hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of the adjacent properties and lands. And while the height of the tennis dome will exceed what is permitted, only a very small portion of the dome will be actually exceed the allowed height. It's a small variance, 4 feet.
Okay, operations in connection with any special use will not be more objectionable to nearby properties by reason of noise, fumes, vibrations, or other characteristics. It would be the operation of every permitted use not requiring a special permit.
Okay, in our permit, our special permit for this project, we will be imposing conditions that will include reducing the limit of any noise impacts, has been shown already. There will be no light impact, virtually no light impact, as there is no light emanated from the dome itself. And the operation will not create any objectionable noise or fumes or vibrations. other than those already permitted in the special permit.
Okay, parking areas will be of adequate size for the particular use, properly located and suitably screened from adjoining residential uses, and the entrance and exit drive shall be laid out so as to achieve maximum adequate safety. I think the fact that there are no new parking areas being created, and the tennis courts will only be used in the fall and winter months, there will be less of a use than the spring and summer months.
But we also need to consider the specific requirements included in section 430.0 number 4 relating to monasteries and private clubs, which means which state that in addition to the general and special use requirements set forth, the additional requirements must also be satisfied. And one of the requirements additionally required would be the location and use. If they do not front direct access to a major or collector road, it would require some relief. But this area is now on a major collector road and is does not apply. It already fronts on a collector road.
Okay, and in the case of a buffer area, landscape buffer area, meeting at least the minimum requirements of this chapter shall be required along all lot lines adjoining properties and residence districts. The club already has a special use permit to operate, and the required setbacks and buffers are incorporated into prior approvals.
And there are also special setback requirements in this section that all active recreational facilities such as the tennis courts and swimming pools shall be located out of doors and shall be set back from adjacent residential property at least twice the minimum distance required for residential buildings. In this particular instance, the setbacks are met without a problem. And the buffer landscaping that has been proposed will more than adequately address this issue. And there should be no detrimental impact with regard to those requirements. And the addition of the dome over the tennis courts does not convert the court to an indoor facility. It's only going to be a temporary structure. It will be used for 180 days or less. And if it is used longer, they need to come back to us for some additional variances if required.
Okay, and finally, in addition to the special standards described above, any private club should comply with any other requirements of this chapter and any other special requirements deemed appropriate. The planning board has issued a report dated January 9th, 2020 with proposed changes. Town planning and engineering departments will also be incorporating additional conditions in the final approval resolution.
And then the only other matter to discuss is just the standards for the variance for the height variance. And you've discussed a lot of the environmental issues already with respect to SECRA and the special permit requirements. So, but you need to discuss the height variance as well.
All right, so the club is looking for a 4-foot area variance with respect to the height of the dome. It is the 4-foot variance is not for the entire dome itself. It's only for a very small portion of it. And granting that variance would not detrimentally impact the neighborhood. there'll be no adverse environmental issues involved with granting that variance. And I think that what we have covered right now should give us a good idea as to how to take a straw vote as to what the members feel on this issue.
I think we might also mention that although there were neighbors that appeared initially and stated some objections they had, I think we have dealt with their objections in a way that should ameliorate any adverse conditions that they were complaining about, which were basically the visual and possibly the noise.
Okay.
So you could just there would be a motion to direct the planning department and my office to prepare a written resolution setting forth your determinations.
Do we need to take a straw vote on this first, or how are we going to do that?
Yeah, that would be, well, that's fine. You could do the straw vote if you were in agreement with the positions that you stated tonight, so.
You're going to manage that, Ken, or do I have to do it?
Jackie, will you do a roll call?
Okay, Chairman Kenneth Cooper,
I vote to approve the application.
Anthony Giardina,
I vote to approve.
Harvey Bonaparte,
I vote to approve, and we're requesting our council to prepare the appropriate resolutions.
Howard Dubs,
I vote to approve.
Michael Nolan.
I vote to approve.
So there'll be a formal resolution prepared that you'll have to approve at the next meeting, but I think that's all for tonight then.
Just one thing, Eric, you're going to incorporate Bob Cioli's comments?
Yeah, all the conditions from the
Yeah.
engineering department, from the planning department will be included in the written resolution. We have to obviously finalize the issue relating to the color and make sure that's very, very clear in the final resolution, so.
That'd be good, good.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I will get the samples and send them out as soon as I get them for everyone's review. And I look forward to attending the next meeting and closing this out.
All right, Victor, if you have any problems with the samples, just call my office, please, or
Will do.
send an email.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck,
Night.
everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Stay
Bye-bye.
healthy.
Good night.
Next case is Cunningham.
Howard,
Yes.
when you're shuffling papers, it makes a really loud sound, and it's good to mute yourself. It's good to mute yourself if you're going to be shuffling papers during when people are talking. That's something for everyone. So, just so you know.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. I am Lisa. I am representing Cunningham, 132 DeVoe Road. I work for the plumber who wants to do the installation of the generator. I don't have a screen to share like Victor did, so I apologize, but the best thing I can do is describe it. What we want to do is install it on the right side of the house if you're facing it. The right side of the house is one of the only flat areas that we could install it. The left side and the backyard are a little bit on a slope. The condenser is also located there as well. So the generator would obviously be 3 feet at least from there. And the electrical also comes in on the right side of the house as well. So we are proposing we put the generator on that side. And during our first measurement, it would put us at 29 feet where I understand the code is 35. So we're asking for, I believe, 7 feet. We did a remeasurement today and it may only be 2 or 3 feet off. So either way, we do need your approval to install the generator.
How is the generator being powered?
Propane.
And where are the tanks located?
Honestly, I don't know. I have been focusing more on where the generator was located rather than the propane tanks. I'd have to look into that. I believe they filed a permit with you guys, so I don't know where it's located on the map.
Tom, do you have any information on that?
The ruling for propane tanks is to be 10 feet off the property line. They do not require a variance. So the assumption is that they were going to be to that same right of where the generator is going as well. When I spoke with the propane company.
Okay, so it can be in the front yard as long
Yes,
as it's 10 feet
unfortunately,
back.
it can be in the front yard as long as 10 feet is the minimum to a property line.
I believe the generator needs to be 10 feet from the propane tank, so we have plenty of room there with the 29 that we had originally measured for year 10 and their 10.
It would be nice to know that the tanks were going to be located in the rear.
Well, it's also going to be on the right side where the generator is, but
Right.
10 feet from the property line.
Well, I'm looking at the survey and it could, if it were in the front yard, I can't even see where the house is.
Yeah, this is the property owner. My name is Jim Cunningham. As you see, I'm on the call. And the tanks are on the side of the house,
Right.
directly opposite where the generator is, and at least 10 feet from the property line. I was out there today and measured it, and I believe Yoaston Campbell was there as well.
Yes.
Oh, I know Yoaston Campbell was there as well, measuring also.
Okay.
So it is 10 feet from the property line, the tanks, and it's in the side yard, not the front yard, where the generator is going to be located.
Okay, that answers my question.
Thank you.
And do you know where the your electric box is? Where is that located?
It's also on the right side of the house.
Okay.
Is Ken there? Did we lose him? There's Ken. Oh, he's muted, I think. Ken's muted. He doesn't know he's muted.
Oh,
There he
yep,
is.
I'm sorry, my fault. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in this matter if they could either use the chat function or please raise their hand?
Okay, David Kulik, I'm gonna open up your speak. Okay, just make sure to unmute yourself, David.
I'm trying.
Okay, there
Sure.
you are.
I can hear you.
All right, I am immediately adjacent to the generator. And
You may want to make sure that your volume is turned down on however you're watching. That might be causing the echo.
is that any better? Oh, all right, I had two devices open because I was
Okay.
flipping out that I missed it. Is this better now?
Yes.
Okay, the placement of the generator is fairly close to our bedrooms. That's the side of the house with our bedrooms. And I know these things cycle on and off. And I think that it's going to be noisy for us. I'm not an engineer, but I don't think that that's the only place on the property that a generator can be placed. It's not a hilly location, especially near the house. I'm judging where the propane tank is going to be by the concrete slab that was installed for the propane tank. It's very close to our driveway, which is a slope. Our driveway's up above the tank and we're looking down on it. And there are kids that will be riding their bicycle on the driveway and playing, there's a basketball hoop there. And I'm just concerned also about the placement of the tank. It may be allowed by 10 feet, but it's a big property and there's so many places where that tank could have been placed. And it's also going to be unsightly and kind of industrial looking to have this enormous tank on a slab right next to our house. Those are basically my comments. I don't know whether you wanted to ask me any questions, or I don't know how this works.
Yep, we will. So the condenser units that are on that side of the house, apparently, are they unsightly or do they create noise that disturbs you at this point?
When you say condenser, you mean the air conditioner?
Yes.
Well, we can hear it, but it's not as noisy as a generator.
Generator doesn't run as often as a condenser unit during the summer months, though.
Are there any other neighbors in your neighborhood that have generators?
Yes. And as soon as the power goes out, we know the power's out because we can hear everybody's generators kick in. And
So-
they're nowhere near as close as this generator.
Right. Well, the addition of one more generator during a power outage, how significant will that be considering you're hearing other generators also?
The other generators are far away. This is very close to our bedroom window.
David, would you agree it's at least 60 feet away?
From our bedroom window?
Yes.
I don't know, I never measured it.
Well, it's 30 feet to the property, 35 feet to the 34 feet to the property line. And then your driveway is probably at least another 30 to 40 feet.
I would have to measure it to know.
Yeah.
Mr. Kulik, it sounded like you were more concerned, perhaps, with the tanks, or as concerned about the tanks as you were the generator itself.
Well, the time that the generator will be a problem is when it's running. The time the propane tank is a problem is always, because it's always there. These things are big and they're pretty ugly.
If the applicant couldn't find another location for those tanks, is there something that he could do in the way of screening that would that you might find acceptable? I don't know that he wants to volunteer that, but I'm asking.
Our neighbor across the street buried his tank, so it's barely visible. And then he put screening around that and shrubs. It's the Cloth's house.
And these propane tanks would be shrouded by, they're in the middle of shrubs.
Well, in the winter time,
The shrubs are still there. I would acknowledge they don't have as many leaves on them, but they still are fairly covered by shrubs.
I would have to totally disagree. There are almost no leaves. They're mostly forsythia bushes there that are in a direct line with our property. There are evergreens further down the hill, but they don't screen the tank.
It's opposite a thick evergreen tree, as I recall.
That's not, from our viewpoint, the evergreen tree does not screen the tank at all.
Well, if something were added, would that take care of your concern as it relates to the tank?
When you say something, you mean shrubbery? If he could make it so that year round, I can't see the tank, then that would take care of most of my objections.
David, you're moving in June, correct?
We have the house on the market.
Oh,
Yes.
I thought it was sold and under contract.
Sold is, I'm not a lawyer. To me, sold means the closing occurred.
Are you in contract?
Yes, we're in contract.
Okay.
The buyers have no knowledge of this project.
Is your contract conditional?
Conditional on,
Anything?
Mortgage, on a mortgage?
it's conditional on having our septic fields repaired, which is in process. And of course, it's conditional upon the person buying the house being able to get a mortgage and a final inspection walkthrough the day of the sale. And they know nothing about this project.
Oh, it doesn't sound like there's anything about this project that would be an impediment to your closing.
Well, on the final walkthrough, they might see it. I don't know whether legally they can back out at that time or not.
They can't.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't really know.
They can't back out. I am a lawyer.
All right.
I would have to agree with Howard. I'm
We
also,
we shouldn't be offering legal advice.
Yeah,
to
all right.
the Applicants, board members, just, that would be,
he should consult his counsel and
Right.
ask them the question. We're just offering.
yeah, we can't offer legal advice to the applicant on that issue, so.
I mean,
if it makes it,
I understand.
Mr. Kulik, is there something that now or after this meeting that you wish to discuss with Mr. Cunningham to try to see if there's a path to a resolution here?
Well, I would certainly be willing to talk to Mr. Cunningham. I mean, we haven't spoken about this yet. I felt funny mentioning it. The project was done without any speaking between the two of us. He recently moved in and we have good relations. I hope this doesn't ruin it. But I'm nervous about the sale going through. If we can have a screening of the propane tank, then I think that would probably help the situation. Perhaps he and I should discuss it. I don't know how these things work.
Well, we would ordinarily ask, if that was the path to a resolution, we would ask that a plan be created and to document what is to be the number and the type of plants to be planted, and that would become part of the record that would continue with the property.
That would be fine with me. Does that mean that the variance is not granted until that's done?
That's correct.
well, the variance could
No,
be.
variance would be granted,
have
but the
Right.
compliance would have to take place subsequent to the building inspector giving his final approval. He's got to inspect the completed job to make sure it complies with what the variance says. But I wanted to ask also, is the generator now located on the property?
Yes,
It's already there.
it's there on a concrete slab. And there's a concrete slab that's been made now in preparation for the propane tank. That itself is at about, the concrete slab's about 10 feet from my property line.
Okay. How long has the generator been located on the property?
Perhaps you should ask Mr. Cunningham. I'm not sure.
It's not hooked up, is it?
The generator is not operational. It doesn't, the propane tanks
Well,
is,
that's not what I was asking. I just wanted to get
the propane, the generator and the pad were put at the same time that the permit was being filed. It was all happening at the same time.
Okay. I'm not saying it's a problem. I just wanted to get, so I'm thinking in terms of his contract with,
Well, have we established that that's the only place for the generator?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, it is. I mean,
What
we've
about-
been out there looking for lots of different places to put it, and to the best of our knowledge.
What
And more
about the other
importantly,
side of
the
the house?
knowledge of Yost and Campbell, that's the best place for it.
The other side of the house is, it's going to require a lot more trenching and digging up Mr. Cunningham's yard to get the electrical all the way over there. And if there is a slope, so we'd have to put the generator at the bottom of the slope. So we'd have to do some trenching for that.
And
Right.
also, it's
I'm assuming
questionable
that
if that's, it's questionable if that has, in my opinion, there's more property on the right side of the house than the left side.
Not according to the survey.
Well, all I can tell you, it's visual. When I go out there and look at it, where the bushes are and where the side of the house kicks in, the garage, that is. And the garage, I think, was in addition to the property.
Well, it's not on the survey. That's the problem.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't.
in
I
any
don't know.
event, I'm assuming that the additional costs would not be insignificant in having to relocate the generator because of the trenching that's required. You also would have to have additional wiring to get to your electrical box. It's just not the area that and that you would choose to place a generator on this property for cost reasons.
Can I speak now?
Sorry? Sure.
I don't understand why it can't be put on the back side of the house. There's a flat patio there. There's a flat piece of land. I don't understand why it's not on the back of the house, but again, I am not an engineer or the tank.
The back of the house is where we have a patio and a deck. And the patio is what we would use. We didn't want to have the patio sitting right, or the generator sitting right next to the patio.
How about the tank being back there?
The what, I'm sorry?
How about placing the tank
Oh, but
where it's
there's-
not so apparent?
It won't be apparent. That's my, see, I think, David, that's where you and I disagree. And it's, I guess, in the eyes of the beholder, I think it's sufficiently shrouded by the existing shrubs, which I will acknowledge during the winter are bare, not totally bare. I mean, it's pretty thick branches back there. And then in the spring, summer, and fall, there will be sufficient foliage, I think, that would disguise it. And if you want to talk about putting an additional bush back there or something, then, that's something we would consider. But I relied on Yost and Campbell to tell me the best place to put it. And they looked at all options and they said, this is the best place. And it is sloped back there.
It's sloped on the side of the house where the generator is too. And that is the most economical place to put it. I can see why they would want to put it there for you. Because it's right, the propane tank's right next to the generator. So there's no big line to run. And your electrical service comes into the house there. So that's where it would naturally be placed.
The whole yard is sloped over there, David. It's not flat.
No, I didn't say it
Okay.
was flat, but it's not flat. It's flat away from near the house.
I don't know what you mean. It's flat away from near the house. What's that mean?
Near the house, it's flat. As you go towards the base of the property, it gets much more sloped.
It's sloped all the way back there. It's sloped
I
all
would
the
love to
way.
have you come
I'll
onto
walk
my,
it.
I'd love to have you come onto my driveway in the winter.
Yeah.
I should have had you do it when the leaves weren't out and you'd see our view of the propane tank.
Gentlemen, it appears to me we're probably not going to resolve this at this moment. So it sort of leaves us in the position of Mr. Cunningham returning to us next month if he can work this out with Mr. Kulik, or the board can go and do a field trip, take a look at the circumstances ourselves, and then vote on it next month also.
Ken, I'm not sure that's necessary.
No? Okay.
We're talking about the propane tanks, which is not even on the application that's before us tonight. And apparently what I heard earlier is that the propane tanks meet the codes. They're 10 feet off the property line and they're there as of right. Now, if the neighbors want to be cooperative with each other and decide on a screening between the two of them and screen them, that's totally up to them. But I don't think we are necessarily required to get involved with neighborly disagreements on something that is put there as of right. We have every responsibility to weigh in on the generator location and whether or not it's going to be a detriment to the neighborhood and all our other requirements. But the tank discussion to me is not something that should be in front of us tonight, and it's just a futile waste of time. So I would propose that we go ahead and make either a decision on the generator itself or schedule, if you want to schedule a field trip, that's totally up to you. We'll all have to come in masks and protective gear and stay 6 feet apart and try to figure out what's going on. But looking back on our history and the amount of generators that we've decided on in the last few years, I don't think this is a big deal.
I have to agree with Tony. I think we have enough information tonight to make a decision on the generator. And I also think that, as he said, the propane tank really is not part of our decision-making process.
Howard, okay with moving forward?
Can I just make one comment on the propane tank?
Sure.
I understand that Mr. DePaul, I believe, is the building inspector.
That is correct.
And I'm not sure that a concrete slab should be placed that close to the property line. That doesn't pertain to this issue. I know. Perhaps Mr. Cunningham and I should meet and try to resolve the tank issue. And you people can decide whether the generator is deserving of a variance. I mean, I've said what I need to say about the variance on the generator, but you people are the people to decide. I don't want to take any more of your time.
Howard and Michael, are you okay with moving forward on voting on this?
I am, but I'm just concerned that, you know, the generator and the tank go part and parcel with each other. So, and I hear the neighbor's concern about the tank, and I would love them, the neighbor and the applicant, to get together and agree to some resolution for the tank. I'm less concerned about the generator.
I'm okay with proceeding.
Okay. Who'd like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Or I'm sorry, let me,
Close the
sorry,
hearing.
I don't think we,
Close the public hearing.
Carrie, did we determine whether or not there was anyone who wanted to speak on this matter?
I don't see anybody else raising their hand, but if anybody else is interested, please raise your hand or type something into the chat box. I know one of the other people is there for a different application,
Okay,
and I don't see anybody on YouTube right now.
okay. I move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Who'd like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application of the Cunninghams at 132 DeVoe Road for the installation of a generator, which requires a 7-foot variance from a 35-foot setback requirement for the following reasons. We have been shown by the applicant that this is the best location for the generator. And considering that the property neighborhood already has a number of generators on the property, on their properties, there will be a very good blending of noise when and if the generator performs. A neighbor has indicated his concerns, but concerning the generator, he is not unwilling to have us approve or disapprove of the application based on the criteria that we use. The granting of the variance will not create an undesirable character or change in character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties. The requested area variance is not substantial. The proposal will have a no substantial or adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And those reasons, I move that we approve the application of 6 months to start, 1 year to complete. And Tom, do you need anything in the way of a survey?
I need a survey, please, yes.
Yeah, and a survey on completion.
I'll second that.
Jackie, would you do a roll call?
Chairman Kenneth Cooper,
Approved.
Anthony Giardina,
Approved.
Howard Dubs,
Approved.
Harvey Bonaparte,
Approved.
Michael Nolan.
Approved.
Thank you. Next matter.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Pat. Pardon me? The next one is Borghese.
Thank you.
Is there someone who wishes to speak on this matter, the Borghese matter?
Yes, this is Michael Picarillo, MAP Architects, here to get approvals for a side yard setback variance for a new retaining wall. We had submitted PDFs as well as paper copies. The wall that was erected without a permit was installed within approximately 10 feet of the property line. Under your current code, a retaining wall is a structure, much like the driveway. So in theory, on paper anyway, we have an existing non-conforming driveway, and the retaining wall is no closer to the property line than the existing driveway. So again, we're here for relief of that side yard setback. The height of the retaining wall closest to the property line is, I think I have it, I documented it approximately 2'6", 2'9", I believe. Hang on. It is 2 feet tall at the closest part to the property line. So again, from what The owner hasn't told me that any of the neighbors have any issues with that retaining wall. The retaining wall is built with like a Versalock type system. It's great.
What purpose does it-
Say again?
What purpose does it serve?
The property behind the house had a slope to it. So the idea was to create some level area, for young children to play in. The retaining, the wall, the existing grade came down to the driveway at a fairly unusable or steep, grade. At the back of the driveway are four steps which lead up to this. Essentially, it's a terraced area.
Is there no other place on the property where children could play, for instance?
Well, the backyard is steep. I sent over 2 drawings on the SP, actually on both of them. The SP 100, more so the SP 100 shows the grades behind the house. It's unusable. Once you get past the retaining wall,
Michael, is it possible for you to share your screen and show everybody the plans?
Not unless I reconnect. I'm connected to the Zoom meeting because my computer at the office doesn't have a camera. So-
I can probably share them from the from eCode. Hang on one second.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
I don't know. Just let me know which one I should be focusing on.
It's the second sheet. It's the SP 100, which it's the site plan. The site plan shows that.
Is this one or?
That's probably fine.
Okay.
You know what? Yeah, that's probably fine. So on that one, you can see it's actually in sort of a tan line. You can see the topography behind that retaining wall is steep. It's unusable, completely unusable. So the idea was to create to terrace an area so that they have some use of their back. They have some semblance of a backyard. And I know that the town board has taken up the definition of a retaining wall. And from what I've been hearing, it sounds like they would not require a variance, a side yard variance for a new retaining wall. A permit, yes, but a variance, no.
No matter what the height?
No, I didn't know. Well, no, I didn't say that. But this is the height of this particular wall is under 4 feet tall. So it requires a permit, but and under your current code, any area that is built, whether it be a walkway or a driveway or a retaining wall, requires a variant, would require a side yard variance. So unlike in any other town, I mean, we work in New York and Connecticut, up and down in Westchester, and certainly all parts of Connecticut, and we haven't come across this issue with regards to requiring a zoning variance for a retaining wall, one under 4 feet tall. But be that as it may, the way your code is written, anything is considered a structure that's built, except for a swing set and an existing stone wall. So even our driveway would be required to have a setback requirement. Anyway, so getting back to this particular retaining wall, it was constructed again to give the client a place for his, as a backyard, as a private area for children to play and use. Because beyond the retaining wall, it's useless. It's too steep.
So Michael,
Yes,
This wall was built without a permit, obviously.
correct. Yeah, so that
Now,
was, Yeah.
My question is going to be, since it was built without a permit, have
Yep.
there been any objections engineering wise from either the engineering department or the building department as to the structure itself and whether it's secure or whether it meets the codes?
yeah, so my client has paid the fine to file a building permit without a permit. And we've submitted drawings. I've submitted detailed drawings showing how it's built. It's built with using, like I said, a Versalock system. Those systems are pre-engineered to go, several feet in the air. This one is only 4 feet or less than 4 feet. So yeah, we've already, and I have not gotten any comments back from, since making this submission with all the details, I have not gotten any comments back from either the build department or the engineering department.
Okay, because I'm familiar with the Versalock or Unilock type walls, and they have to be installed in strict accordance to the manufacturer's recommendations. And are we sure that the wall was done that way?
Yes, from what I saw, how this was built in comparison to the manufacturer's recommended installation, it is.
Can I say one thing on the wall?
Yes.
The retaining wall, I wrote a new memo to the board. We're gonna have a new law.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of confusion with the retained height. So I looked at the grading plan here, and the retained height is actually from the bottom of the footing to the top of the wall, which is much more than a 4-foot minimum, which people always thought would be okay. The grading behind this wall is a 2-on-1 slope. That's like a 26.5% slope. So based on the new law, and I would ask the architect if I were reviewing this, that to make certain in their design components that they check this for sliding, overturning, and settlement, because the grading in the back of the wall creates an additional surcharge on the wall as opposed to just having a level backfill. So that would be one of my comments. I haven't made a formal review on this yet. I will. That will be one of my comments to make certain that the architect engineer certifies too that it has been checked for overturning, sliding, and settlement because of the additional surcharge in the back.
Yeah, we can reach out to the manufacturer to have them certify the installation was done in accordance to how they pre-engineer these walls.
Okay, thank you.
Is that certification typically done at the beginning before the construction of the wall, or is it done at the time of the building inspector's final approval?
We always require, if it was coming in from scratch, a brand new application, we always require the engineer of record or the architect, or the two people who can design these, to certify that they have looked at the overturning, sliding, and settlement, and it all meets the factors of safety prior to the construction. And then when the wall's built, we make the architect or engineer certify to it with an as-built that it has built accordance with the plans as designed and approved. In this particular case, they have to get an as-built of it, make field determinations, and check the calculations to make certain it was built in accordance to how it was designed in the first place. Because we keep in mind, it's after the fact now, so there's a little bit more research they have to do that the architect has to do in this particular case.
So Bob, does this certification need to be issued before the zoning board can act on this application then?
I would have no objection if they do it before we issue the CO for the wall by the building inspector.
Hey, Bob?
Yes, sir.
Since you brought up the new law, can you tell the zoning board what other aspects this new law has as far as the zoning component to it?
You know, I think Tom DePaul can speak on that more so than I. I was really focusing on the structural end of the design and the analysis of the walls, but I would let Tom discuss that at further length because he was involved with the review of that new local law as well.
So Tom, would you care to share with the zoning board of appeals what the town board is planning on doing with the law regarding new retaining walls?
Well, the wall is still being proposed and has not gone into local law yet, but they're proposing to not have to send similar walls of this size to go for a variance. This is something we've been discussing with the town for a while to try and alleviate this problem. And if we did the building permit application from the beginning, we might have been able to state that, hey, it'd be worth your while to wait, and then you would not need a variance. But at the current code, the way it is written, you do need a variance.
And Tom is right, because in speaking to the town council, the law has been, I believe, approved by the board, but it still has to go for public hearing. Planning board, I think, still has to look at it, and then it has to go up to the state. And then once the state files it and accepts it, then it's into law. I'm not an attorney on it, but that's what I've heard from Jennifer and Drew, the attorneys for the town.
All right, so the change to the law is not significant, it's not relevant to our review.
Well, the law is not in effect yet. I think what the applicant's attorney is saying is if it was done after the law was enacted, then they wouldn't need a variance. I think that's what he's trying to say, but the law is in effect and he does need a variance.
No, I'm trying to identify a problem in your zoning code that the town board has taken up to correct. And again, it doesn't forgive the fact that it was built without a permit. But the point is that again, the town board is taking up and found an issue, as we did, with the way your zoning code is written. And again, in the sort of spirit of trying to look at that and compare it to our application, if our application wouldn't even be before you in, say, 6 more months. But, and that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, unfortunately, what's before us now is the only thing that we have. And it requires us to look at the code as it's currently constituted. And we really can't take consideration of the same things that the town board does, because we don't have that authority. We're required to follow the code as it exists.
Let me find out if there's anyone who wishes to speak to this application, and if they do, would they either use the chat feature or raise their hand, please?
If you're on a phone, you can also press *9 to raise your hand. Up, let's see. One of the panelists. So you can speak. Gregory Voorhees.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Firstly, thank you very much for hearing this appeal. We went through a building project, and we added an addition to the house. And when we were speaking to our architect and the builder, it was our understanding when we were looking at this that we were able to build it. And unfortunately, there was this misunderstanding. So there was no, from our side, I wasn't fully involved with kind of the planning. We thought it was something allowable. I spoke with Bob, I spoke with the building inspector, but I understand, that it has to go through the process. But so far, as we were putting the addition on the house, everything went out without a hitch. The side yard, the variance on that, basically, the backyard, there's a significant, there's not a lot of room back there. And even to get to the backyard, there was an existing small retaining wall and steps that weren't built out properly. My kids every day they were slipping on the slate steps. So that's the reason why. And, there's some yard on the other side of the house that, I don't have full view of them if they were to play there. And, I have coyotes and all sorts of things running through my yard. So really the back part of the house is where I really need them to be playing, which is why we built the house. And, I live on one of the best streets in Chappaqua, I'll tell you that. And my neighbors are phenomenal. I've spoken to Dr. Johnson, who's my next door neighbor, and the entire neighborhood. I mean, our street. We have about 6 houses on the street. We all have a very cordial relationship. I'm proud to live on the street, and unfortunately, this misunderstanding happened. Not something I really wanted to go through, but I thank all of you for your patience and your time. Thank you. And if there's anything else I could do, to rectify this, I'm happy to do it without any delay. I'm a priest in the Orthodox Church. I don't really want to cause a problem for anyone. So thank you.
Anyone else on the board wish to raise any points? Therefore, I'll move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Who'd like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion at the application of Greg Voorhees for for the construction of a retaining wall within 10 feet of the property line where 35 feet is required. Should be approved for the following reasons. The granting of the variance will not create an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. There is no other way to achieve the benefits sought by the applicant other than to construct this wall. This is, in some respects, this may be considered a substantial variance, but due to the property configuration, it will not be considered substantial. There will be no adverse effect on the physical environment or conditions of the neighborhood. This is a self-created hardship in that fact, but although the house hardship is self-created, the factor of self-creation is far outweighed by the benefit to the applicant as opposed to any detriment to the town or the community. The applicant is, we need surveys on this, Tom. You have any measurements? What are you going to need on that? He's muted.
We have a site plan with submittal, and we'll need a final survey.
You'll need a final survey. Okay, so this approval shall be predicated on a final survey and as built. Also, part of the approval shall include the certification by architect or engineer that this wall was constructed in accordance to the manufacturer's recommendations. And you don't have to do the 6 months to start because it's already there. For those reasons, we should approve.
A second.
Chairman Kenneth Cooper,
Approve.
Anthony Giardina,
Approve.
Harvey Bonaparte,
Approved.
Howard Dubs,
Approved.
Michael Nolan.
Approve.
Okay. Next case, Kingfisher Philanthropies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have an evening.
Kingfisher. Whenever they're ready.
I know that people are here. I think it's just a matter of them unmuting themselves and turning themselves back on.
Hello.
There we go.
Who's going to make the presentation for Kingfisher?
I'll start. John Kirkpatrick.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Ready.
I want to make sure Anthony Grau is here. Anthony, you have control of the screen yet?
Yep, I'll bring it up.
Okay. So we'd start with the area. Are we showing the area map now?
Yes.
Anthony, you
No,
might
we're
have
not.
to select the correct window because we're just seeing the list of all the files right now. So you might
Oh,
have to
yeah.
stop
There's a way to
sharing.
yeah.
Okay.
There's a way to share all my whole computer. I forgot to do that. There you go. Is that better?
Yep.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right. That's good.
Anthony, you can move your mouse, but we cannot. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So if we're ready, I'm John Kirkpatrick. I'm representing the applicant. And as you know, the application is for a special permit, but with several necessary variances in order to allow establishment of the proposed Round Rock Preserve, which is a not-for-profit open space preserve. This is showing you the general location. But I also want to note Laura and John Damaris, also here on Zoom with us, the owners who live close by. In fact, Anthony, if you can, with your mouse, you can show where they live. Ellie Hendrickson is the landscape architect.
Right.
She's done all the design work on this idea. And Anthony, who's handling all the illustrations, has done all the engineering. This is a property which consists of the 3 lots that are outlined in black of what you're looking at. And what's outlined in white is the Brandywine subdivision on Cynthia Court. That subdivision underwent a long and painful process, but by this time, even though roads are built, utilities are in, houses have been built or are being built on all of the lots except the 3 outlined in black. In 2015, before construction got started again, Mr. and Mrs. Damaris persuaded the developer to sell them these 3 lots because they believe they're just too beautiful to be developed. And before I go into the ins and outs of our application and legal arguments, and because this is a public hearing, some may not have heard this, I would like Laura to step in and explain their vision for this property. Anthony, let's go to sheet 2 in this slide. There. Laura, are you there?
I am, John. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Volume's a little low.
Okay, let me see if I can fix that. Is that better? That's as high as it goes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all again. Thank you again for your time. I'm Laura Damaris, as you know, and next to me is my husband, John Damaris. As John Kirkpatrick has mentioned, we acquired the land when the previous developer went bankrupt. We don't live too far away. We had been, owning our home back starting in the year 2000. We had been familiar with this property as undeveloped space for years. When the construction started, we could see the damage being done to the properties, and when the developer went bankrupt, we saw an opportunity to recuperate the land. We spent a good deal of time once we acquired the properties to correct the damage that had been done. There was a large pit created that was, I think, the beginnings of a foundation for a house. A lot of trees had been, destroyed. So we set about fixing the property, carting out the debris and repairing the pit. We transferred the property to Kingfisher Philanthropies, a nonprofit charitable foundation, part of whose mission is conservation. And our dream for this land is that it be a preserve, returned to the extent possible to its original condition. And by that I mean taking care to the extent that we can, the introduction of invasive species that have become a problem on the property since the property was excavated and the trees were taken down. We'd like to return to the extent possible the native plantings. We have a short half-mile chipped path intended for the quiet enjoyment of the neighbors and the community members in Newcastle. There are 2 beehives in the back of the property adjacent to a meadow. And we are installing a pollinator garden to encourage the return of native pollinators. And we have included these properties on the pollinator pathway that has been an initiative of the town of Newcastle in partnership and in association with other neighboring communities who also have a pollinator pathway. So very happy to answer any questions, but John asked me in particular to speak about what our dream is. And what our dream really is for this land is to return it to its natural beauty and to preserve it for the residents of Newcastle as a quiet, peaceful spot for them to enjoy.
Thank you very much.
The reason that we're before you is that it has been established, and you have agreed, that this has to be classified as an institutional use, which means it requires a special use permit. The requirements for this as an institutional use are not a very good fit, but nevertheless, we believe it still makes good sense. Anthony, if you would, could you hit slide 9? I think I've shown you this before. It's the map that the town puts out of all of the existing recreational resources. If you look up very much up there in the top, then you'll see the Choate Sanctuary. I think, yep, Anthony is moving his mouse around in the area of the property. That's Brandon, that's Circle. Cynthia Court comes off it. The street that comes straight down from Choate Sanctuary is Bittersweet. There is an existing parcel owned by the Westchester Land Trust at the end of Bittersweet. And there is a parcel that was a part of this subdivision that is to be deeded to the town, and then it will have a conservation easement over it in favor of the Westchester Land Trust. So the area that we are proposing for Kingfisher is actually adjacent, immediately adjacent to 2 pieces of very similarly intended land, which are not-for-profit open space. We think that what we're proposing is something very much like all of these. In order to be granted a special permit, of course, your board needs to find that what we're proposing serves a community need or a convenience. And I think Laura has explained that very well. It needs to be in harmony with appropriate and orderly development of the district. Well, it's adjacent to 2 existing and proposed open space preserves, so I think it will in fact be in harmony. It cannot hinder or discourage appropriate development of adjacent buildings and uses, but I think the neighbors there would agree that this is certainly nicer than having 3 more houses. And it's not more objectionable for that very same reason. Instead of 3 large single-family houses of the kind that people tend to build in Chappaqua these days, there will be fewer people on site and fewer cars coming in and out. You, of course, are required to find that parking areas are of adequate size and located and screened, and entrance and exits laid out appropriately. Well, this will require a variance because although the parking area will be adequate, properly located, and suitably screened, it doesn't actually meet the requirements of an institutional use for the number of spaces. There's also the point that institutional uses are only permitted in this residential district on a site of at least either 10 acres or 10 times the lot size requirement. And well, 10 times the lot size requirement is 20 acres and we only have 11. So yes, that would also need a variance. It also has to be located on a street that has direct access to a major road. Cynthia Court is a very local street. Brandon Circle is the same. So again, that's another variance. Then of course, you must make a finding that the intensity of use is limited so that traffic and other effects will not exceed that which would be expected if it were developed in 3 large single-family houses. And the number of persons permitted on site at any one time is also limited. So again, we would need a variance because we would like to have up to 30 persons on site at any one time for occasional tours for garden clubs and the like, and the standard would only allow 18. But we also have a building coverage standard, which I think we have no trouble meeting since we have no buildings. There's a setback standard for buildings. Again, we have no buildings, but there's also a setback standard for off-street parking areas, which is equal to the setbacks for buildings. And we would need that since the parking area is actually located immediately off the access driveway and the property line. I think I mentioned we would need a variance on the minimum number of parking spaces. We are providing 4, 10 is required, but I don't think we'd ever be likely to even need 4. And even then, there's the cul-de-sac of Cynthia Court, and there's a common drive leading up to the top of the property that will be the preserve that to some degree could allow parking. So I think we have enough. The last would be that the institutional uses have to be attractively landscaped. And a buffer area is required along all lot lines. But since the entire property is existing landscaping, I'm hoping that you will agree that no additional buffer area should be required, but we would need a variance. And the variance standards are quite similar to the special permit standards. No undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood. I think I said that before. The benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method. Well, no. If we want to use this property for a preserve, this is the only way we can do it. It requires a special permit for an institutional use. And the special permit standards for institutional uses are written for different kinds of uses than this one. So we would need the variances. And these variances are not substantial. They're only what's necessary and reasonable. I don't see that these are going to have an adverse effect or impact on the neighborhood. The preserve is compatible with the neighboring preserves and less impact than the 3 houses that could be built. And again, the difficulty was not self-created. It's just something that results from the necessity to obtain a certain category of special permit that is not particularly compatible with the proposed use. we stand ready to answer any questions. Ellie is on the Zoom. If you have any design questions or any technical questions for Anthony, and of course, anything for the owners or anything for me. Thank you very much.
Could you explain people visiting this site? I know you said that there were 10 parking spaces required. You wanted to provide 4. You also talked, I think, about a club that might want to go and travel through the sanctuary. I don't understand. How will people get there and by what means?
Certainly. Well, they have to come by car. Anthony, can we go back to the a slide that shows, it would be slide 2. Yes, there we go. Either that, go back to the one before it, if you would, just for an idea of where we are. So access to this is off of James and Brandon Drive, leading to Cynthia Court. It's a pretty isolated area. So the only way you get to this is either you happen to be in the area anyway and walk in, or you can drive. You can drive to the end of Bittersweet Lane and walk in over other properties, which will be available sometime in the near future, or you can drive around through Brandon, Cynthia Court, and park in the cul-de-sac. Anthony, would you go to that next one that shows the, okay. So then you see at the top, there's the cul-de-sac of Cynthia Court. Common Drive South comes off of it and leads to 3 house lots on which houses are being built. So those folks will all be quite some distance away. The cul-de-sac itself has space on it and on which people can park. Plus, there is an existing gravel parking area off Common Drive South that holds 4 cars. And there's the existing Common Drive North, which is in gray on this, which goes up the hill. I've driven that. It's not too easy to turn around up at the top of it, but you could put a certain number of cars down at the bottom if you're willing to back out again. So if we come to the point of something like a garden club visiting, it's always been assumed that we would make arrangements for some kind of a minibus to bring everyone in. But we want to be able to have that many people there if there's a desire to have a tour of this preserve.
During periods of non-pandemics, it would be permissible to park on the roadway as you've described it?
It's permissible now. I'm not sure why you would not be able to park there now. It's a matter of observing social distancing to stay a reasonable distance away from everyone.
Okay.
With regard to the garden club visits, you were saying around 30 people would come, and you're talking about a minibus, which I think would be preferable. Would you have any objection to the special use permit requiring a minibus after a certain number of people, rather than have 30 cars parked on Cynthia Court, which might be kind of objectionable to the residents there?
Laura and John, I believe that's really a question for you.
We have no objection to that. And I'll note that we had drafted some rules and regulations for the preserve that we would post at the preserve and on our website. And one of those rules is that for groups larger than a certain number, they would need to contact us for a permit to come. So, so the rules of the preserve preserve, embedded in the rules of the preserve are a notion that for groups that are large enough to require something like a minibus, they would need to reach out and get permission. So we have no objection to that, in answer to your
I
question.
think that says groups of 10 or more, right?
Yes, exactly. So we're well within, given that, and that was part of the purpose, by the way, was to keep larger groups, from using this without us knowing. We would want to know, and we would want to make sure they were aware of the rules, and we would want to make sure that that was under control. So that was why we put that into place.
So what methods would be used to enforce those rules? Would there be security on site or something of that nature? Or how would the enforcement come to pass if something like that should happen?
We have no plans to hire a security guard. That being said, if there is someone, we regularly check the property, and if we get, if we have, and also we're reachable, by the way, if somebody else witnesses something, they can reach us through the preserve's information email. So, if we know a group is coming, we would certainly be attending to that and noticing it and being in communication with the group. And if somebody has a concern about something that's going on in the property, they're to reach us, and we regularly check the property.
But also, I think, we've prepared signage to put at all entrances of the property, which would outline the rules. And so, certainly there's going to be people who violate rules, but from our point of view, there would be appropriate signage that would lay out what the rules are. I mean, in our view, the norm would be just people from the community hiking on the property. I think visits of groups would be rare as opposed to the norm. The norm is just to open it up to the community so that people in the neighborhood can go hiking.
I've reviewed their proposed plans and visitor rules. They're an attachment to the submission. And I think we can deal with your concerns and my concerns by making it a condition to the permit that they cause those rules to be posted and complied with by all people who are, covered by the rules. So that would just be an ongoing condition in the permit.
So my next question might probably be to Eric, that if we were to incorporate their rules in the special use permit, does that give the town additional enforcement powers? And if somebody should complain, that the town could enforce those rules, not just the preserve owners?
Correct. If a condition of the permit is that those rules are in fact part of the special permit, the town would have authority to require enforcement of those rules, correct?
Yeah, but I'm looking for protection to the neighborhood and not put all the onus on the preserve owners or managers themselves. At least have the town to back them up.
So the police could enforce an infraction.
No, I think what would happen is if someone complained that the permit conditions were not being complied with, the building inspector would check it out, and if in fact he found that there was non-compliance with the permit, the wording of the permit that we approve, he would issue a violation, and we would have continuing jurisdiction to deal with those violations. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah, that's basically how, basically the proceeding with respect to it. It was same as a violation of any other condition to a special permit, correct?
So we'd make the foundation liable then.
It's not yes, if they're the one who the special permit is issued to, correct. If the conditions are not being complied with, they would be the one responsible for the failure of the compliance, correct?
So is this considered a private property as a foundation then?
Can you say that again, Michael? I'm sorry.
Is this considered private property? Even as a foundation, is it considered private property?
Yes, it would still be considered private property, right? Unless unless there's a contemplation of transferring something to the town, which I'm not aware of.
Well, because I used to be president of Twin Oaks, and I remember that if something were going on our property and the police had to come in and whatever, arrest someone or whatever, we had to sign off as a board to allow the police to enter that property at any time.
Well, I'm not familiar with, police are allowed.
Very different than what we're talking about, Michael. I think as a private owner of a club, the police don't want to come in and enforce rules that we have without.
No, yeah. I don't mean those rules.
That we've authorized them to come on the property.
Right.
Police wouldn't be enforcing private rules anyway. I'm not understanding the example, Michael.
No, I don't mean that. I think someone referenced before, like if the police were needed to be called for something. I don't mean their particular rules of the property. I mean, if someone were trying to burn something down on the property or something like that, and the police were called, they would need to have authority from the owners of the property before they could come in there and take action.
I don't believe that's correct.
I don't think so.
If there's a law being broken that requires enforcement by the police, they have the authority to come on private property. They don't need special authority. If you're complaining about someone that they stole something from a building on your property, or something to that effect, or that they're trespassing, without approval, the police might want some type of written statement from the property owner authorizing them to come in under those circumstances and deal with the offenders, but not for a breaking a law that similar to the ones that we're talking about.
Right, a civil law, yeah.
Yeah.
Eric, wouldn't this be considered quasi-public, this property?
It's still private property. It's by invitation of the public. By invitation of the property owner, the public is being invited onto the property. That's why we're doing it through a special use permit. There's going to be obviously indemnification provisions and other things running to the town and hold harmless that are going to absolve the town of any responsibility for harm that occurs on that property.
Right.
That would be my recommendation. That hasn't been raised by the applicant, but I'm assuming once we get to where we need to go, that's what's going to have to happen in order for these trails to be open to the public in general.
I have a question for the applicant regarding the title and any covenants and restrictions affecting the title. Are there any homeowner development agreements or anything of that nature which restrict the property's use, which would need to be approved for your particular request to use this property under a special permit?
The whole subdivision is subject to 2 homeowners associations. These 3 lots are subject to the requirements of what's called HOA North. And essentially they are all maintenance requirements. The owners of these properties and another have to pay their fair share of the maintenance of Cynthia Court. They have to make sure that the wetlands are preserved and properly maintained and the like, but they are all maintenance style obligations. There are no use restrictions in any of the documents.
Eric, would it be appropriate for our board to include their continuing compliance with those maintenance requirements as a condition to the permit?
I would have to look at those requirements. I mean, I don't know if the town wants to be responsible for enforcing for requiring enforcement of those maintenance requirements. That's something I'd have to discuss with the building inspector and the engineer and the planning department. But
It might not be necessary if it doesn't have, if the, you know, their non-compliance with those maintenance requirements doesn't affect the, what we're giving them as special
Right.
permit, then it doesn't.
Right, that's at this point, it's a private matter, and I don't know if the town wants to become involved in those requirements.
But what happens if payment is not made in accordance with the homeowners association?
That's an argument amongst the homeowners.
I mean,
my clients
is there
are
a right of
3 out of the 4 homeowners.
Is there a right of reversion or something? I mean, what could happen to the land? If
More likely than not, there's probably a right for the homeowner association to come in and perform the maintenance work, and then maybe there would be a lien on the owner's property, which could be enforced by the homeowners association until they pay for those costs. That would be the worst case scenario, and I'm not sure that might be insignificant or not. It depends on what the homeowner association documents say. Perhaps, Eric, you should take a look at them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a fund should be established to make certain that those payments will be made.
Well, I was thinking on that same line, just bringing the subject up, that if a lien were to put on one of the residents' houses, that would be a problem because they could never sell their house without satisfying the lien. But if a lien was put on the property that's just being used as a preserve, it's theoretically never going to be sold anyway. So what would be the enticement to pay the fees of the homeowner association? So like Harold just said, maybe some kind of a fund or some kind of a bond could be posted to guarantee that.
I'm not sure that's really necessary, because normally if you have a lien on your property, you need to take care of that lien, or else the person who holds the lien has a right to enforce it, which in this case might be the forced sale of the property ultimately, in order to get proceeds to pay for the amount of the lien. So I think there is sufficient, there should be, if Eric determines that we don't need anything further, I would be willing to just pass on this and let him, let the homeowner association documents speak for themselves.
Well, I can certainly look at the documents. I mean, I think if there could be a condition saying, you know, that if the provisions of the homeowners association requirements are violated, that could be a grounds for a revocation of the permit. That may be the easiest way to do it.
Right.
But let me take a look at those. We're not going to be voting. We're not going to be voting on this tonight. So
I mean, we have to think about this, you know, going out 100 years.
Right.
Also, I had a question for Tom. Tom, I didn't see your typical memo on this as to what's required in the way of variances from the section 430-06 institutional permit uses requirements. I mean, so they're listed by the applicant. I'm wondering whether you are in agreement with the applicant's listing of what those required variances are.
I did review their request that they put through, and I am in agreement with them. This does not come through to us via a building permit, or a denial letter was not written.
Okay, thank you. But your statement is that, yes, his listing of those proposed variances is correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Does Sabrina want to be heard on this matter? Do you know, Eric?
I don't know if Sabrina is still on or not.
I am still on.
There she
I am
is.
still on. I can tell you that I haven't done my due diligence to go through the details of this as a special use permit. It really, it was submitted, we wanted to get it on before your board so you could have an introduction to it, but we will have to do the usual process whereby we would address SECRA and make sure that it meets all the special permit requirements.
Okay.
Are there any other boards that this has to be referred to?
It will need to be referred to the planning board and potentially the environmental boards. Again, a deeper dive into the application materials will really be significant. In addition, there is some public use on the property already with the utilities that were initially installed in relation to the Brandywine subdivision. So, and I would defer to the town engineer, who again is in the same position I am. We really haven't fully dived into the application materials to be able to provide you with that information.
Yes, I agree with Sabrina on that. I haven't had the opportunity to review it yet. This is just introductory. But I will do a full review, such as Sabrina and Tom as well, I believe. But I just wanted to mention one thing with the common drive easement. I'm going to get the view options here. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. Annotate, mouse. Can everyone see my mouse?
Yes.
Your hand.
Yes, this common drive south is really part of the HOA for the 4 southern lots. And this driveway, I remember it because I went through all the agreements when this thing came in many, many years ago. And just for everyone's note, this is paid for by the people that live south, the 4 lots, and it's not included with this. I would imagine from a practical standpoint, these people who live south and the southern portion of the 4 lots might have some objection to this lot being used for the trail, which is going to create more wear and tear on the trail, and who's going to be responsible for that maintenance. So my just recommendation is they might have to change this easement with everyone else's approval that lives on the 4 southern lots to make this common driveway be built, because that's always maintained by the 4 south lots. And also Mr. Chaudry, who lives in lot 1, is also part and parcel of this HOA. So I would imagine they'd have to get his agreement to be in this HOA for this new plan the applicant is proposing. I just wanted to get that on record.
I think, again, this is something of a legal nature that you would have to look to the homeowner association documents and any easements that are written into it regarding Common Drive South. It's obviously, if it's part of a common drive that is paid for by the association, then there must be an easement for that the association members to use that. I'm assuming, but again, this depends on what the association documents say. And I think, Eric, we need some guidance from you on this too.
No, understood. I mean, I think the applicant is listening tonight. It would be helpful to get, before the next meeting, where this matter is heard, the applicant's position with respect to the homeowners association documents, with respect to the use of that common easement drive. I would also recommend providing their assessment with respect to SECRA and, whether that was not addressed in the application, whether this is an unlisted action, type 1, type 2, that was not addressed in the application. And that's something for an initial determination we have to make, which could impact whether or not, lead agency notice needs to be sent out to all other boards. So there are a lot of preliminary matters that still need to be addressed, but I think we've got a good idea of the scope of the application right now. But those are all items I think the applicant, is on notice now, need to be addressed before we can move forward.
If I may, I'm just will we be provided with some sort of a list of these sorts of items that you feel we need to come back to you on? I heard you say something about secret, which I'm not familiar with. There was a number of others. So is there some way in which we'll have a clear understanding of what information we need to come back to be able to provide the zoning details with exactly what they need?
Absolutely. Staff and council will review your application materials and submit information to the zoning board regarding your application. You will be copied on all of that communication and be responsible for responding accordingly when you're scheduled again on the zoning board agenda.
And is there a time frame typical for those sorts for when we might expect to receive that material?
I think it's up to the pleasure of the board, but I think if they want to continue this application to their May meeting, have staff review by that May meeting.
Thank you.
Ken?
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this matter who we haven't heard from yet?
You can just raise their hand again. I think somebody had wanted to speak earlier.
Is Mr. Rosenbaum or Ms. Young interested in speaking on this matter?
I'll open up Ms. Young's. Okay, you should be able to talk. Just make sure you're not on mute. In the lower left corner is the mute button. I'm sorry. You just need to make sure that the lower left microphone symbol is not crossed out and you will be able to speak. Sorry, I think they're muted on their end.
You can't unmute them, huh?
No, not to start with.
Okay.
Can you see them?
No, they're only in by microphone. I'm going to transfer them in as a participant and see if that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just find the name again. Miss Young, if you're still there.
Looks like they dropped out.
Yeah. Okay, it might have just been still live from earlier, the link.
Okay, Eric, what else do we need to do here?
So you can just adjourn to at this point, I don't believe there's any other action you need to take other than to adjourn to the May meeting and direct the planning, engineering in my office to prepare, memos for the board reviewing the application.
Okay, I move that we adjourn the meeting and ask planning, engineering, and council to prepare memoranda to the board on next steps.
I'll do it. Don't worry about it. I don't like it if it's attention to the name.
It was muted. I'll second.
Jackie, could you do a roll call?
Chairman Kenneth Cooper,
Agree?
Anthony Giardina,
Agreed.
Harvey Bonaparte,
Agreed.
Howard Dubs,
Agreed.
Michael Nolan.
Agree.
Okay, we'll see you next month.
Ken, Jeff Rosenbaum had just raised his hand again. I'm going to open it for a moment.
Okay.
Hi, I'm sorry. I thought there was something on the agenda related to a bunch of properties on Whippoorwill Road. Is that not on the agenda?
That's next.
Next item.
Oh, got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
And someone else who just dialed in, if you want to raise your hand when it comes to public comment, you would hit *9. Okay, you're all set.
Ready
Oh,
for
wait,
the next
yeah,
one?
I'm sorry. They just raised their hand. They might have been the woman who was trying to speak before.
Okay.
Hi, you should be able to speak now.
Oh, great. This is Lavinia and Simon Young. We were having audio problems by the Zoom app, so I just called in on the phone. So we are the original homeowners at 37 Brandon Drive, which was the pre-existing property before the Brandywine, the road was put in to the cul-de-sac and then the common drive south. And so we've been here throughout all the construction and our original sort of driveway to Brandon being turned into a road and all of that. So I just have a question. I don't know whether it pertains to the zoning board or whether I have to bring it up in another forum, but you mentioned a homeowners association for the houses within Brandywine. And so is that formally established? I know some houses are under construction and a couple have been sold. The Chowdhuries live there now, and I know another house was sold. How do I find out more information about that? Because it just concerns us with regard to the road and who maintains the road. And you can imagine through different seasons and all of that.
I think she has to consult her attorney and someone who's familiar with the title on her property, because these things all seem to relate to her title and anything in her title.
Can I speak on the roadway itself?
Yes, please.
I'm familiar with the historical background because I was around when that thing was first built many, many years ago. That road is still a private road. When it came before the planning board many, many years ago, before Brandywine was built, it was offered for cession. However, the Floridos went bankrupt before they dedicated it to the road. So it's still in the hands and owned by Sterling National Bank, which is the bank which oversaw the bonds and took over the property. So to answer her question with the maintenance, it's still a private road and the town's not responsible right now to maintain it. And speaking to Nikich, who's building the 4 lots on the south lot, he made some indications where he may come into the town to dedicate it, but as it stands, it still is a private road. If that answers one of her questions.
Yeah, I guess, I had brought this up some years ago and not going to respond. And then, of course, all the ownership changed. So it's sort of a work in progress, I guess. So is this to follow up in terms of how things stand? Do I approach the planning board? I mean, people have referred to an association, but does such an association even exist if the houses haven't been sold yet?
Are you raising these questions because you have issues or statements you want to make regarding the application for the?
No, here's the
my
rub.
husband.
Hey guys, it's Simon Young. Here's the rub. There are 4 houses being built by Mr. Nikich. There is the Chowdhuries residence, and there is our residence.
And then there's the
So there are-
Kingfisher Philanthropy properties up
Yeah,
top.
the Damaris's, God love them, up at the top. So there are basically 6 houses. But at the end of the day, what's happened to us the last winter or 2, and what I suspect will happen this coming winter, is that Rehan Chowdhury and we and Mr. Nikic are, between the three of us, every time there's a snowfall, splitting the cost of a significant plowing job 3 ways. And we're getting a little tired of that arrangement. Not that you guys have anything to do to remediate that for us, but we're wondering if at some point in the future that is forecast to change, in as much as, and Mr. Scioli referenced this in his prior comments, with respect to Cynthia Court actually becoming a town road. Do you have any view on that in the future?
I don't think that the things that you just mentioned, I do not think they have anything to do with the application before us for a special permit. I think those all relate to your title issues and things that affect your title to the property and should be discussed by you with your attorney.
Understood. Well, we don't have an attorney, but understood it's out of forum. So we'll withdraw the question. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're ready to move on to the next item, right?
Next one, you ready? Rockledge Farm?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Rockledge Farm ready?
We are here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
again, this is an application, which is a very large application where staff felt it was important that you received an introduction. Staff have not reviewed the application materials in totality, but we felt that we should at least have an introduction to the zoning board regarding the project.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm trying to share my screen. I'm Jerry Barrett. I'm the landscape architect and planner for the project, and I believe our project team is with us. Amy Zabar and Bill Wachtel are the owners. Leo Lennis is the farm manager, and Teo Sequenza is the project architect. He'll be working on the architecture when we get to that point. So this project is for Rockledge Farm. It is a proposed organic farm on 48 acres on both sides of Whippoorwill Road, which is right here. I don't know if you can see that. If you can
Screen
see
is black.
Yeah, Jerry, you might have to check the window, that you have the right window open, because we're just getting a gray screen.
You're getting a gray screen. Okay, let me see what I got here.
Maybe try closing out of the share and open it again.
Okay.
There he goes.
Yeah, now we're seeing the list of all your plans and not the plan itself.
Okay, well, let me see if I double click, will it come up?
I don't think so. You probably have to stop sharing and then make sure you're sharing the plan window that's open.
Okay, I'm gonna hit the share screen button. Is that the appropriate thing to do?
Oh, yes, and then pick whichever window you see that has the plans in it.
Okay. No good?
Yep, that's good.
You can see it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so Whippoorwill Road is right here. And what we have here is what this is the former Twin Oaks Swim and Tennis Club in this area here. And this is the Wachtel Zabar residence, these two properties here. So what we have called this is Rockledge Farm East, which is the former Twin Oaks Swim and Tennis Club, and then Rockledge Farm West would be these parcels here. Basically the farm, the activity hub of the farm would be in this area on the Twin Oaks, and the more passive part of the farm operation, the growing of lavender and that kind of thing, would be on the more residential component. So we did meet with staff on a couple of occasions to review this and explain to staff what it is that the owners are trying to do. I know historically we had done several studies for the owners of what might what might happen on this property, and we looked at other recreational type uses. We looked at residential components, and it just didn't seem the economics were there. And I think they came up with the idea of creating an organic farm on the property, and it seemed to be a practical idea. And so they'd like to proceed with that. We met with staff and they asked us to prepare a couple of plates or plans for your review. So this is an existing conditions plan, and I'm going to go quickly because I know the hour is late. So we have the entry road coming in. This is the former hub of the swim and tennis club. This is the former pool. This has now been demolished and taken out. This was the former cabana building that had the showers and the toilets and all that type of thing. That's still there. That is proposed to be converted to a caretaker's residence for the operators of the farm. This building here was the former snack bar / kitchen. It's proposed to become the kitchen for the farm to, create farm products, that kind of thing. There's an existing septic system that services all this in this area here. These were some of the tennis courts. There were several banks of tennis courts. Access road through here. There's an old structure up in here. It's primarily a wooded property, and it's got some steep terrain on it. Primarily wooded. On the other side of the road, there are two properties. There is the property here that serves as kind of a guest house and a caretaker's residence. The main residence for Wachtel Zabar is in this area here, and this property has a greenhouse on it. It has a swimming pool. It has a tennis court, and a lot of open and green lawn areas and meadow areas. So that's kind of the overview of what's out there now. I will quickly go through just to give you guys a flavor of what's out there. This is the entry to going into the Twin Oaks Club in here. No, actually, these photos are over here. This is over in this area. Some of the trails, all the properties are linked by all these trails. But when you get out to the former Twin Oaks site, this was the building up here. It was part of the it was like a snack bar, I think, for the tennis courts, and there's a bathroom in there, and that's proposed to be reused again for Rockledge Farm staff. This is the former cabana area. That's this area here, and that's the building that would be converted to the caretaker's residence. This is the former kitchen snack bar for the club, which was right here. That would become the commercial kitchen. This is just the parking area in there, in this area that's there. Let me go to, I'm going to move right along to the site plan to kind of explain what it is that the owners would like to see happen here. So what we've done is we've developed the plan, and we've provided a keyed legend to explain what's going to happen. So on the main hub of the farm, the main access road, that would remain the same. That wouldn't change. We do have a water course and a wetland system here. We have 150-foot buffer, I believe, here, or is it 100? I think it's 150-foot buffer, and we are proposing to stay out of that. There may be, maybe some pasture areas. There's a septic area here, but what would happen here is, of course, the caretaker's residence would be developed in this area. The existing parking area that's there now, it would stay there, and it would just be modified a little bit to accommodate parking. The kitchen, of course, would be here. There would be a new barn that would be built, and that barn would be built, for feed storage and to shelter the animals. There'd be some holding pens in here. And what we'd like to do in this area here is create the sheep pens in this area on the interior of the property. And if you see this red line coming through here, that's the 250-foot setback from the property lines. And I believe town code requires that if you're going to have animal pens in a residential district, that you have to keep them at least 250 feet away from the closest residential adjacent neighbor. And that's why we've done this. So you'll note that we have the sheep pens in here. This would be a goat pen. So all of the animal pens would be centrally located and surrounded by a natural buffer of mature trees all the way around. That 250-foot buffer on the Rockledge Farm West is in this area. And the only animal pen proposed now for there is just, this would be kind of like a nursery for small animals or something, and that could be inside. Right now, it's maintained as lawn. These tennis courts, the idea here is that the tennis courts have been converted to produce areas where the tennis court surface has been opened up, and there's been soil added to those so they can grow produce in there. One of the areas would have just a hoop house over it so they could grow, they could propagate during the winter. They do have some refrigerated storage in the form of kind of a trailer in this area here. This area here would end up being a composting thing, a composting area where you kind of take the debris, you put it through, it looks like a big dumpster. And as it passes through, it creates topsoil, and they could use it for other parts of the property. This bank of tennis courts here would serve as the chicken coop area, and it's all fenced in. It has a mesh over the top of it, and so it keeps all the predators out, and so you could keep your chickens secure. A proposed sugar house here would be to process maple syrup. These are just some holding pens. This area here would be a greenhouse that the owners are trying to relocate from the former Marani Gardens in Armonk, and they're going to put it in this area, and that would allow them again to propagate plants over the winter. So when it's time to do the spring planting, their seedlings are all up, and they can get them out into the vegetable plots. We also have some areas that would be goat pastures, and that would be in what we're calling L, and the goat pastures are more in the areas that the sheep pastures would have to be cleared. You don't have to take out all of the trees, but we'd have to take out a lot of the trees so the sheep could be grazing on grass. And I also think it would actually be an attractive feature for the property because it would open it up, because right now it's very, very wooded, and it would kind of give it a nice expanse and a very nice backdrop to the farm area here. On the other side of the road, what we would have is there is an existing orchard here that would be renovated and added to and create a fruit orchard here. There would be a little fruit stand that would store the fruit. These would be lavender fields. That would be the existing mowed lawn would be turned into lavender fields. Again, we would have a little animal, a nursery for young animals or sick animals. This is an existing greenhouse that would be continued to be used to propagate plants. This is a path that goes through the back area. One of the things that's not on this plan, but perhaps we'd like to talk to the zoning board about it, is I think the owners would like to turn this area here into another goat pasture, which of course it would be outside of this 250-foot setback line, and therefore we would have to request a variance from this board for that. But one of the reasons why it might be practical to do that is because the area is very densely overrun by invasive vegetation, and the goats are just fantastic at eating all that vegetation. And once that's out of there, then the area can be replanted. So I think that gives us a kind of an overview of what's happening. I think in terms of zoning considerations for the special permit use, I don't know that there would be any really substantial change to the neighborhood at all. This Twin Oaks property, the interior here it's very secluded. You can't see any other homes when you're in here. This whole activity area sits low. This rises up dramatically. There are some homes up here, but I don't think they would ever see what's happening down here. And there are no homes in this area, and there's no homes in this area. And of course, it's set way back. And as far as Rockledge Farm West, I mean, the only difference you would probably see is you'd go from mowed lawn to lavender field. So I don't really think there'd be any change in character to the neighborhood. And I think it's probably a less intense use than what the former swim and tennis club was in terms of that. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be sought by another method. I think to operate as an organic farm, I think we need a special permit from this board in order to do that. And again, we think that as far as special permits go, we think this is probably a better use for the property and a less intense use for the property than what was formerly there. Again, when I go back to whether the variance is substantial, again, we think it's it's probably a less impactful use than the swim and tennis club was in terms of traffic coming in and out of the traffic coming in and out of that. It's there's really very little traffic. There's less than 10 employees that go in here to work on a daily basis. Occasional deliveries come in, and the deliveries are all, everything comes into the interior of the site. So it's not like there's a lot of cars that are coming in and out of here. Certainly the septic loading that was happening for the cabana and on the septic system, which is adjacent to a regulated wetland buffer, that of course is going to go way down. Whether they will cause an environmental impact, well, we don't think so. We do realize that there are environmental permits associated with this, particularly and most substantially to create these pasture areas for the animals. And we would have to take out the trees. So we would probably need tree removal permits. We would need steep slope permits. It would represent a change in cover type. It would generate more stormwater. We need a stormwater management permit. And we understand that some of those permits will be processed by the zoning board, and some of those might have to be processed by the planning board. But we've done quite a bit of this before, and we know that during the short term with proper erosion control planning, we can control short-term impacts, and by revegetating the site, we can control the long-term impacts. So we don't think there would be any adverse impacts to the environment that we couldn't easily mitigate. And again, whether it's a self-imposed condition. Obviously, this is the owner's choice to do this, but we feel this is a good adaptive reuse of a property that was no longer being used, and I think it's serving a function and a need to the community with the farm to table type operation of growing local produce and farm products. So that's kind of the overview, and given the hour, perhaps we ask the board for some feedback, and whether the owners would like to add anything, that's fine too.
Well, you haven't explained what type of commercial enterprise will this be? What will be sold? Who will you be selling to? Will you be exporting products to other clients or end users?
Well, I think we tried to cover that in our cover letter, and I think at the moment, there's a lot of produce. It's a lot of produce being produced in these areas here. Chickens would be producing eggs. Beehives would be producing honey. The sheep would be sheared, and the wool would be sold. The goat milk would be harvested, and that's sold for the creation of soaps and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where the operation is focused now, and I think maybe Annie might be able to talk to that point a little better than I am.
Would there be a slaughterhouse on the property?
No, I don't think so. No. Annie, are you on?
Hi there, everybody. It's Annie Zabar. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for meeting with us. It would be chickens. Nothing would be slaughtered. We are not interested in killing animals and selling for meat. The eggs would be sold to local stores, to the farms, to the farmers markets. Same with the produce, honey as well. So we're not looking to ship stuff or mass market anything. We want to just preserve the land and be able to grow items and sell it locally.
Are you going to have any retail sales from the property?
As of right now, that is not our plan.
What about hosting schools or guests or anything like that?
That is currently not in our plan. If it's something that we wanted to do, we would then come in front of you again.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned earlier that I used to be president of Twin Oaks, and I know the land well. I also know the Donovans well.
Yes.
So I know all the land there very well. And before Sutton Farm was sold to develop it, I had often thought that that should have been an organic farm. I thought it would have been a great thing. So I think, your idea is awesome idea. I think and as I say, I know the land very well. I used to really explore that land a lot. It's beautiful land. It is very hilly and rocky, but I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Is the ownership of these parcels, there are 3 parcels, is it all in the same owner?
Yes,
It is?
they're all owned by me and Annie.
So you and Annie own all 3 parcels because the title appears to be in separate, different entities.
Well, there are 2 LLCs of which we are the owners. That's 345 Whippoorwill and 348 Whippoorwill. And 341 Whippoorwill is owned by me and Annie individually.
341 is the big piece.
341
Is where we live.
on the home on the west side.
That's on the other side. So there are 3 parcels. There's a residential parcel that's going to be used. There's a parcel that you're saying that you're going to live in.
We currently live in 341, which is on the west side of the street, the large house, which is where the mouse is currently. We have a greenhouse there where we grow our own, seeds and to plant in the garden that we have. And 345, which is the property right next door, used to be the gatehouse for the original property. And that's the offices for the farm would be there. And the gentleman who takes care of our property lives in the house there.
So the permit would be for all 3 parcels to be operated together in that particular use, even though there are different title ownerships. We'll have to deal with that in some way, Eric.
We can adjust the title ownership however is necessary, because at the end of the day, directly or indirectly, we are the owners.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard on this matter?
I'm going to open up Mr. Rosenbaum's microphone.
Yes,
Okay.
hi. Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, we're interested in what types of exotic animals may be living behind our house. We're aware that there were plenty of exotic animals living across the street from our house in the past several months, including sheep, goat, alpacas, llamas, and we're just interested in what types of exotic animals may be living around here.
There's 2 llamas, no alpacas. I think there's 5 sheep and 4 goats. And that's as far as, and there's some bees and beehives, some chickens. There's no other exotic animals.
And in terms of the noise that you expect those animals to emit and
Other than some braying, they really don't make much noise. I've been here for since 2008, and I had chickens, 4 chickens, 5 chickens in my own yard, in my own coop, and never, there's so much space between us and neighbors that we never had a complaint for the chicken. We don't have rooster. You get rid of roosters. We can sell them. We just give them away. We don't kill them, but there's never been a noise complaint in terms of an animal.
And if I could just add that the purpose of this is to create these pastures for the animals. That's the whole purpose of this, that we'll have them isolated on the interior here, and that's principally one of the reasons why we're here asking for this request from the zoning board.
yeah, I understand that. That just happens, my backyard happens to overlook that. That's all I'm saying.
We're
In
not
terms of,
looking to have a huge animal farm. The llamas are strictly there to protect the sheep and the goat. We're not interested in having 20 sheep and 50 goats, and that's not what we're looking to do right now. It's more horticulture and eggs and apiary, and that's really what our focus is going to be.
understood. And what are the latest CDC guidelines around those species of animals and their ability to either have or transmit COVID-19?
Social distancing, I guess, would be the thing. It's not Wuhan. We're not a live market. We're not butchering. We're not selling, and the chickens are not commingling with the goats. So I don't know exactly what the CDC guidelines are.
All right, well, we live kind of, right in the middle of all three of your properties, as you may be aware. This is the first we're hearing of this, and I guess that's cool. But anyway, all the other houses in and around these properties have very small children. So presumably that would be fully vetted and taken into account before any of said exotic animals are allowed to be roaming in or near any of these properties.
Absolutely, and they won't roam. And I have my own children, and they're all medicated and seen by a vet. It's not.
They will never roam.
They're not free range. They're not free range in terms of they don't have all of Twin Oaks to run around in.
Mr. Rosenblum, there's a lot more that's going to go into this process. There has to be an environmental review that's going to look into a lot of the things that you're concerned about. And there will be many opportunities for the public to comment on anything that comes up along those lines. So we're not doing anything tonight that's going to be finalized.
Just for clarification, Mr. Rosenbaum, is this your property right here?
No, my property is the one that's
The right of the driveway, Jerry.
Yep, 344.
So would that be
The one that's covered on all three, flanked on all three sides by the green.
This one right here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That stretches all the way back to the green.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all you had, Mr. Rosenbaum, at this point?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the record is clear that it's our expectation that if wild animals or exotic animals will be living in the vicinity of our properties, that all of that will be fully vetted.
We've got it.
In normal course, as well as all of the heightened CDC guidelines as it relates to animal transmission around COVID-19 is fully and properly accounted for.
We understand.
Both by the property owners and by the town.
Right. It'll be taken care of. Yes. Thank you. That was it, Carrie, right? There was no one else who.
That was the only other person on, and
Okay.
there's nobody on YouTube.
Okay. So similarly, Eric will hold us over.
Correct. Adjourn to the next meeting and authorize planning department, building, engineering, my office to prepare appropriate memos to the board, providing direction with respect to this application. And I'm not sure on the timing of those yet, when those will be provided, but we'll see how things play out in the next before the next meeting.
I think it's our intention is to try and not overwhelm you virtually in the sense of having these big applications before you. Tonight was a little bit heavy, I think, in regards to the number of applications, the size of the application. So we're going to be cognizant of that as we review these two large special use permits.
Okay, thank you. I make a motion that we adjourn this matter and that we request that planning, engineering, our council provide their review and submit same to this board.
I'll second the motion.
Jackie, do we have a roll call?
Chairman Kenneth Cooper,
Yes?
Anthony Giardina,
Yes,
Howard Dubs,
Yes.
Harvey Bonaparte,
Yes,
Michael Nolan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
we have minutes to approve before we end.
Yep.
If I could just add, Sabrina and Tom, would it be possible to have a conversation offline to talk about what might be possible for any interior renovations to the existing cabana that might be able to proceed?
might be too soon for that.
I mean, we realize this is going to be a long process and the owners would like to be making some headway on the project if possible.
I defer to you on that.
The property as of right in an R2 is allowed a single-family dwelling. Under that pretense, they could go forward to convert the bathhouses into a residential housing. It is a possibility, you know, it would not change your outcome if you decide that the farm is not permitted. They still could have a house on the property.
It's something that we'd like to discuss further to try to at least, you know, move things forward. We realize we have a long road ahead of you. There's a lot of information to be covered, but it would be helpful if the owners could be making some progress on that front.
You know, my only concern is if the house is in conjunction with the overall development of the property, you know, we wouldn't want to separate those into two separate proceedings. You can certainly discuss it, but there needs to be some consideration of the interplay between the two, those two projects.
Well, Eric, then maybe you and Tom and I should have a conversation, knowing that, Jerry, that's kind of the direction you want to go in, to see if it's possible.
Right.
I don't want to waste everyone's time tonight to try and.
Yeah, understood.
Right. I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm happy to have that conversation. That's not a problem.
Okay, Jerry, so
Very
Tom,
well.
we'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's the conclusion of that matter. We have like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the January 29th meeting.
I'll second.
I think it's the February 26th.
February 26th.
February 26th, February 26th. Those two.
I'll second again.
Jackie, could you
Chairman Kenneth Cooper,
approve?
Anthony Giardina,
Yes,
Harvey Bonaparte,
Yes,
Howard Dubs,
Approved.
Michael Nolan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
You can all go home.
Good night.
At least the commute's not bad.
Hey, you know what, Eric? I'm home already.
Commute
I
ever.
think we all.